It was conceived as a short, victorious war by a terror-stricken leadership in Washington with revenge on its mind. But 10 years after the Iraq intervention, the cost of war is still being counted in lives, scars, and American dollars.
The US and the Iraqi government has spent over $200 billion trying to rebuild the Iraqi state and, from the American point of view, more importantly, the Iraqi army. Iraq body count, I think, conservatively estimates the amount of people murdered at about 111 to 120,000.
It took days to march into Baghdad, but the consequences of the war, for Iraq, for the region, and for international relations, will endure for many years to come.
Plan A was get in there, defeat the Iraqi army, and the Iraqi people would want to bring about massive change, bring about democracy, and stand up their own country again. In classic military parlance, of the three plans that we thought about, it's always the fourth that happens. And in conversations I had in Washington with some pretty senior people like Rumsfeld and others, it was quite clear to me there was no plan B and plan C. Plan A was, we don't need any other plan.
Iraqis had great hopes of what the US intervention would bring. I mean, many of them dreamed that they were going to be like Dubai overnight. If America can put a man on the moon, imagine what it can do to our country. And so people were sitting there, waiting for these miracles to take place. And when these miracles didn't take place, they thought, America must be stealing our oil, America must be stealing our electricity. Today, Iraqis have hope that their future can be better. But people are also very, very concerned about what's the future of their country. There's a real fear that the Prime Minister is moving towards authoritarianism, and there's a real fear that there's going to be another civil war.
هناك دكتاتور شيء آخر، شكل آخر. هناك دكتاتور طول الحياة، وهنا دكتاتور على مدى فترة قصيرة. هذه الفترة القصيرة ممكن أن يمارس بها أقصى أنواع الدكتاتورية، لكن بالتالي أكو صناديق اقتراع اللي هي ممكن الشعب العراقي إذا حس به أنه دكتاتور ممكن أن يغيره. هذا هو الفرق.
The legacy of 10 years of post-invasion, 10 years of an American-empowered new regime, corruption is endemic. Transparency International indicates that Iraq is probably the third most corrupt country in the world.
بغداد مدينة بالحقيقة كانت على حافة المدنية. كانت كل مستلزمات أن تكون مدينة عصرية، مدينة مبهرة، مدينة متميزة متوفرة فيها. لكن في لحظة معينة انحرفت وبدت باتجاه أن تكون قرية. الآن بغداد قرية، عبارة عن قرية. كل الأموال اللي صرفت عليها مع الأسف ضيعها الفساد.
Within the last 10 years, the oil industry is definitely in a much better shape than it was in 2003. However, it's not in a superb shape. The issue of political wranglings, political bickering, political power games in Baghdad and who gets what are actually keeping the oil production much to a lower level than Iraq could be. One of the consequences of years of war and this political turmoil, people were skilled and professionals have left Iraq and therefore Iraq faces a lack of skilled and professional people in a number of industries, not only in the oil and gas industry.
I think for a lot of people in the Middle East, watching Iraqi people go to a ballot box and being able to start making decisions for themselves, I think a lot of other people in the Middle East began to say to themselves, you know what, I wouldn't mind a piece of that.
Some people try and claim that the Arab Spring is a democracy movement inspired by Iraq. The impact Iraq had on the region was mostly negative. People saw change, people saw transition, and they associated that greatly with violence. And so it led to other countries, other regimes, clamping down on their opposition groups. It also raised sectarianism to levels that had never been seen before in the region.
Mr. Bush and Mr. Blair took the United Kingdom and the United States to war on a false prospectus in a way that breached international law, and there have been no consequences. In fact, it's even worse than that. Mr. Blair, having broken international law, blatantly in my view, now is involved in the quartet, which many people find highly offensive.
We are not perfect people. We do not work in perfect organisations. The question we ask ourselves first and foremost is, what is the intent behind this organisation? Does it want to do the right thing? And the maxim for the British Armed Forces is to be a force for good in the world. Over the 10-year period, how many British soldiers served in Iraq? I don't know what the figure is, but probably 100,000. Now, amongst that figure, did we have some people who did some bad things? Yes, we did. Do we get it wrong occasionally? Yes, we do. I think we're a very experienced army today. What Northern Ireland, the Balkans, and particularly Iraq and Afghanistan has done is to produce an operational hardness and capability of the British Army. About PTSD, I am very clear that we have got a problem. We've got a bow wave coming. PTSD, on average, takes about 11 years to really show. They say, and I think it's probably true, more Falklands guys have committed suicide than died during the campaign, because people struggle to live with these things.
There are important lessons we should learn, and perhaps the biggest of which is the limitations of our power. In Iraq, we thought we could just come in, nation build, impose liberal democracy on a country. It is hubris, really.
The Obama administration has a clear policy on Syria. It's not to get involved. It's to limit its exposure to Syria, and that comes straight from the lessons learned in Iraq. There is no mood or appetite or ability, I think, in the United States administration to intervene meaningfully and positively in Syria.
I think that the war in Iraq in a domestic context was significant for this reason. It was the moment in which trust seeped away, trust in government.